Mark Dowdle, welcome to Hobby of a Lifestyle podcast today. How are you?
I'm doing well, Andy. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. I mean, we've probably just recorded half a podcast before we pressed the record button. It's fantastic to have you on the show. Mark, obviously I came across you on Instagram. I'm pretty sure Instagram looks at social media and goes, yeah, this person, we'll flag this person up and recommends other people that share an interest or I've interested in, like so many other people who have joined the podcast. You're one of those ones who just loves to set yourselves crazy challenges. And,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love that. Do you want to talk about the most recent crazy challenge you've just done, just to give people an idea of what you are best known for?
Yeah. So the thing I most recently did from June 1st to June 14th is I ran from St. Paul, Minnesota, 481 miles to Chicago, Illinois. I did that over the course of 14 days, mostly self-supported, pulling everything in a kid runner stroller behind me. So I had an extra pair of clothes, a tent, a cooler, some camera gear to do my best job at vlogging and creating content around it. And then along the way, I competed against four college athletes in what I'm deeming a Beat My Beer Mile challenge. So, beer mile is when you drink four beers. In this case, I drank four NA beers before each quarter mile lap. So, it would be four beers in 1 mile. And what I've done is I've created a series around challenging college athletes or current or former athletes who run a normal mile to see if they can run a faster mile than I can beer mile. So I did four college athletes along the way. And, you know, it was every 2 or 3 days. I would stop at a college, race someone, do a bunch of editing, continue on. And so that was my most recent challenge. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I watched all of those, and what I couldn't get around was how you had the energy to also race someone to do a beer mile after the amount of miles you were covering, and like you say, it's pretty much self-supported, pulling along
Yeah.
a baby stroller with you, which is
Yeah.
the podcast is pretty well versed with the beer mile now because we did have Corey Belmore on for
Okay.
for
Nice.
one of the
Yeah.
last episodes. Obviously, current world record holder,
The guy's a
unbelievable.
beast.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I couldn't drive. I was saying to said to Corey, I said I couldn't drive a mile the speed that he runs it in. So it's absolutely incredible. And to be fair, when you were looking at your miles, considering the miles that you've covered before you even race these young athletes, your miles still very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I was joking with a buddy. I was like, my ego will never be able to handle losing because there's no way I can beat Corey Bellamore, right? And so I'm
Well,
like, what can my ego do? Well, if I run there, then I'll have an excuse not to beat him because, so no, but it was it's I've been going back and forth with Corey and just trying to get submitted into the elite heat at the Beer Mile World
right.
Classic because that's my next challenge. And he is such a phenomenal dude, genuine and supportive. And um, I'm just kind of dipping into the beer mile niche of runners, and they are such a cool group of people.
I can quite believe it.
Core's best, yeah. So I just the great people, and the beer mile is such a phenomenal event.
Before we even get back to all the beginning and find out where the journey began, what's
Yeah,
what kind of piqued your interest in this beer mile? Because it wasn't really something I'd ever heard of, and not that I would, because I'm not a running athlete, but you
yeah.
know, you kind of combining one of my favorite things with something that I really dislike. I'm thinking about doing a beer mile myself without the running, but I know I'd actually really like to try it. But you combining two things that you know ultimately you would never combine, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're being done. What's been your motivation to now go? That's something I want to try.
So the short answer is the hunt, the chase. I had a race back in October. It was a 50K race in Duluth, Minnesota, and I finished, I think, seventh or eighth. But I passed. Let's say I finished in seventh place. I passed the runner in front of me in the last, you know, 10 to 20 meters of the race. And it was a straightaway stretch the last mile. And I was gunning him down the entire last mile, just slowly chipping away. And the mindset that I had of just like hunting him down one step at a time, and then having this explosive finish where everything in my body was just like, it's gonna hurt, and just breaking through that wall. I'm getting chills just talking about it because it puts me back in that mindset of like hunting and competing and going to a different place mentally in order to overcome the pain that I was going through. And all of the runs that I had done previously were all more just like endurance. How long could I go? There wasn't really a competitive nature to it. And when I started doing, and we could talk about the Calendar Club Challenge a little bit later on, but at the first day of the month, I would do a beer mile to celebrate the end of a month and the start of a new month.
Right.
And I just started bringing friends out and competing with them. And this very quick, it's done in 10 minutes or less, or 6 minutes or less. And
30 minutes for me.
It's super quick at 30 minutes.
Easy.
But it's a super quick, super replicable thing where you can go there really quickly. Like chase someone down, hunt someone down, compete, and then it's over. And it was something that I hadn't experienced in running. I come from a college football and lacrosse background, American football. And so that competitiveness, that like getting in that zone was something that I had missed. And the beer mile was the first thing in running outside of that race experience that I was able to like, oh, I can do this every week if I want to.
Yeah.
So
wow. And
long-winded answer, but
yeah, no, and it's fantastic because I'm almost sat there thinking about it from a few different angles now and thinking it's great. Like, you've seen some within the running community, running world that really, I suppose, like you say, motivates you. It's a race. It's a real challenge. But also in my head, I'm thinking, how hard is the transition from, as you say, you're very much an endurance athlete. You're running huge miles.
Yeah.
Then training to be explosive and fast over, 400-meter races.
Right. It is a difficult transition, I think, because running such a unique sport in the way that when you say running, it encompasses the entire sport, right? But then there's so many different sports within the sport of running.
Yeah.
And going from like playing on a field, lacrosse or football, and using sprinting, short distance, short spurts, then going to like, can I run for 5 days on end? You don't need to sprint at all during that. No. It's like the grandpa jog. And it's a completely different mechanic and mindset. And then now I'm switching back into the sprinting mode. So it's reframing the mechanics of how I run, how I think about things while I run. And it condenses that all down to, in some instances, it's like 20 seconds. You're thinking about all of this information, where in running, it's just like, can I just deal with the pain in the ultra type of stuff? So I think that the shift is hard, but that's what's fun about it, is it's something I'm not used to and something that I can see, am I making gains at, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, we've talked about so much already. Let's just get back to kind of.
You want to start?
Oh, I know it's phenomenal, and I'm conscious that my podcast follow the same kind of timeline every single time, and I probably need to let loose myself. But I genuinely like finding about where a person grew up, where they got to, because I think being able to see the journey actually helps others who may be inspired or helps to inspire. So let's now get back to the very beginning and learn kind of, where you grew up, where you're from, and what you were into as a child.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, a town called Northbrook. Grew up playing sports, neighborhood kid, hopped on a bike, was outside playing sports every day. It didn't matter what the sport was. Went to high school, played 3 sports in high school, and then went to university in St. Paul, Minnesota, called University of St. Thomas, where I played college football and lacrosse.
Okay.
I wouldn't say my transition or my story from running really happened until, that time period from my senior year until I graduated. But as a student athlete at St. Thomas, I ran into a couple different problems with the school by getting in trouble, whether it was drinking or it was smoking. And that kept me, that started my process of internal, well, what's the right word for this? Like an internal shift of self-reflection.
Yeah, yeah.
I got in trouble 3 times at school just doing dumb stuff. And after the first 2 times, my answers to, the situation was pointing the finger out. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why are these things happening to me when I look around and all my friends around me are doing the same types of things? And it was after that third time where I started to take more of an internal dive, self-reflection, and that was really the first instance of kind of transitioning away from. That's where I feel like my new life began, because that trajectory from that point was a lot of taking ownership of my life and responsibility.
Can I just ask a question around that, because it's
Yeah,
really
please
interesting?
do.
I was delivering a talk for a local college over here in the northeast of England a few weeks ago, and talking about my sporting journey. And I believe that everybody has to go down a dark path in order to get to a light path. And there's points in our life where you've got two options. You can decide to go down that dark path, or you can decide to, as you just described there, that self-reflection, and actually go, what I'm doing is going to take me down that way. I need to go down the light path. How hard was that for a young person? As you say, your friends are all doing the same things. It's very easy in those, I suppose, in those years where you really are finding yourself to go and follow your friends. So how hard was that decision for you to look inside internally and then transition into what, the path that you're on now?
Yeah, honestly, it was difficult because of the embarrassment and shame I felt around feeling like I had to make this change as a 20-year-old,
Yeah, yeah.
where it was like, man, it was admitting, and maybe even in that moment, I wasn't fully admitting that the way I was living wasn't sustainable for a life, a good, enjoyable life. But I remember it's so silly because my birthday's in January. My junior year, I made a New Year's resolution. This will tell you of how committed I really was. But my New Year's resolution when I was a junior in college was, I'm not going to drink hard alcohol, but I'm still allowed to drink beer. I'm just not allowed to drink. I'm not allowed, because with beer, I was like, okay, I can have a couple beers and nothing's going to like turn me over the edge without me
Yeah, yeah.
knowing, you know? But that's how committed I was. I was like, this is like, and my 21st birthday was a Saturday, and everybody's offering me free shots. Everyone wants to buy me a drink. And it was the first time that I said no to every one of those requests. And it might not seem like a lot, but I remember in that moment feeling somewhat embarrassed to admit to people, because the first thing people ask is like, why? I'm offering you a free
Yeah,
drink.
yeah.
And I had to admit that, like, I'm making this change and this is why I'm doing it. And I no longer want to go down this path. And with the embarrassment, there was this other side of like, wow, I'm proud that I'm actually finding the strength to say no. And a few weeks later, my roommates they acknowledged the changes that I was making, not just with that decision, but in other areas of my life. And I think that was a very significant time where I made a change based on realizing that it was time for me to take ownership and start on a new path, no matter how small it was.
Yeah.
And then getting recognition and acknowledgement from people that I cared about and cared about me was big. But I think early on, just that embarrassment of admitting and owning and outwardly expressing that to other people,
Yeah.
because that's not what you do in university. You're supposed to live it up, you know?
Well, I didn't go to university in the traditional sense straight from school. I
Right.
did it later on in life, but that doesn't mean I didn't kind of still
Yeah.
party and whatnot. It's very much, but you're talking there, and there's a lot of dissecting. I think certainly for a young person, there's kind of two sides of the story. One, if someone says no, then we shouldn't even have to question that because we don't know what their
Yeah.
circumstances, we don't know what the story is. But two, it's about supporting those decisions. If someone's decided actually that's not for me, it's about removing the embarrassment, removing the taboo of actually this is something that I should, just because it's what society believes I should be doing. Actually, it's something I choose not to do. So there's a lot in there, and I think it's a I don't want to say a brave decision because, but I suppose at 20-year old when you're surrounded by friends who are constantly doing that, I suppose it is a brave decision to be able to say, actually, no, I'm okay. This is the journey I'm on. These are the decisions I've made. So thank you very much for sharing that because I think it's a really valuable lesson that certainly young people can listen to and hopefully listen to both sides of that story and reflect themselves.
Yeah, and if I could add one thing to that, which you gave me an idea here of like, I don't, it wasn't that anybody asking was out of line for asking, because if it was a month earlier, I would have been all for it.
Yeah, yeah, of
But
course.
I think what made it difficult is because I was making a significant change in how I was behaving, and that was out of the norm from how people would normally interact with
Yeah,
me. And I think that for young people, that's a big takeaway is like anytime you make a significant change and you step out of how you ordinarily act, the people around you are going to be taken back by that
yeah, of
for good or for
course.
bad. And I think just being able to stick to your why you did it and be strong in your belief, every time after that they're going to start interacting with you in the precedent that you have now set for yourself and for other people. And so that initial time is really hard because you're changing and it's hard
Yeah.
to deal with that. But I think that's an important takeaway, that the beginning is really hard, and the more you can get consistent with that, the more you change the environment around you.
Did it almost become easier once people knew because when
Yes.
you tell someone you almost feel the embarrassment comes when you stop doing it almost
Yes.
you flip it on its head a little bit. So I
Yeah.
can imagine the more people that you tell and the more people you have to hold yourself to that
Well,
standard then.
and then the embarrassment comes once you've told people and there's this new precedent set. And if you step backwards into the old mindset, then
Yeah.
it's people like, I thought you changed. I thought you were doing things
Yeah, yeah.
differently. So it's almost a way to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, yeah, of course. 100%. Anyway, I apologize. I just some really interesting stuff coming out of that I didn't want to kind of just skip by.
Yeah.
So that you've transitioned, you've made these life changes where all of a sudden you've decided to take this route. Talk me through the rest, some more of the journey.
Yeah. So coming out of university, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do with work and life, but I knew that I wanted to try something different, something outside of the normal day-to-day 9 to 5 job. I coached at the university that I played at for a year and simultaneously worked for a cold brew coffee startup. And that's sort of when my running journey began, because this cold brew coffee company, the two founders, they were Ironman and marathon runners, and there was more of an active. I was the fifth employee there, so it was like
Right.
very tight knit. It was this culture of high energy, active lifestyle, and the part of the reason that you know I had kind of found myself in trouble was internalizing a lot of the anger and feeling the feelings of being lost, and then deploying that out on game day, and then bottling that back
Yeah,
up
yeah.
and deploying it. And so there wasn't this process of healing through the things that I was going through. And so I signed up for a marathon the spring after I graduated. And through running, I just found that when I'd come back from runs, this chip on my shoulder, this heaviness in my chest would be gone. And I think from that day forward, I was just kind of hooked on this idea that uh, no matter how difficult the day could be or how difficult a time period in my life would be, running was the thing that brought me out of feeling like I had to express these negative emotions in a destructive way. So marathon turned into ultra marathon, turned into the Goggins 4x48,
But
turned
that's
into,
that's
you
what
know,
interests me.
yeah,
You decided to take on a run. You're now exploring running, and you're realizing that running is something that's really helping you therapeutically, mentally, whatever, with emotionally. a marathon for your first run? Just was
Yeah.
that again? Was that was that the competitive side of you wanting to compete against yourself and go, I'm really going to start testing my body and see what limits I can take it to?
It was really more so that's what I thought runners do.
Okay.
You know, I have two older siblings. One sister was a former college athlete, and she got into running after being in college, ran a marathon, and I just thought that, like, for the most part, that's all I knew that runners
Yeah.
did. And you run, and then you train, and you run a marathon. Um, and so I signed up purely for that reason, for like, hey, this, like, if I'm gonna run, then I should do the Twin Cities Marathon this year.
Wow. What was that experience like then for you? Your first, I suppose your first major run, and to run at 26.2 miles.
It was one of the hardest things I had ever done.
Really?
Yeah, I probably didn't train enough, probably going back to the ego, not thinking that I could just walk in, and it was painful. I had made this commitment that I was not going to walk the entire time, and yeah, I paid for that. But it was painful. But a
Yeah.
few days later, I was like, that was awesome. What
Yeah,
more can I do?
of course. So that marathon really did kickstart the journey. And what came after the marathon? You talk now, you're doing ultra marathons and you're doing super duper ultra marathons. And
Yes. So after the marathon, I think I just learned more. My next thing was going to be an Ironman, and this is the this is the competitor in me. I was getting ready to sign up for an Ironman, and I'd seen a buddy post something on Instagram that said him and a bunch of guys had just completed an Ironman, and it instantly became uncool to me,
oh, really?
because in my head I was like, if they can do it, I can do it without a doubt. I want to do something that other people can't do. It.
Yeah,
This started the journey of, like, how do I separate myself from the marathon runners? Because I had seen, my sister had done a marathon, and then she never picked up running again.
yeah.
And I see that time and time again with a lot of former athletes or people, where they run a marathon and then they never run again.
It's me.
And so and there's no shame about that, but I just didn't want to turn into, hey, I ran a marathon this one time 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
I still
I'm
live on
not.
that.
Well, we got to get you back out. Okay. We got to
We'll
get you
see.
back
We'll see.
out. And going through YouTube and watching these mini documentaries, I'd come across Iron Cowboy. I don't know if you're familiar with James Lawrence.
No, I'm
So
interested now
James,
though.
yeah, you should check him out. So James Lawrence, he's a guy out of Provo, Utah, and he had done, at the time I was watching him, he did 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days,
Wow.
and then I think this was 2 years ago, he did 101 Ironmans in 101 consecutive days.
Do you know
And
this now? I think you said. I think I may have seen him.
yeah, and then Sean Connolly, do you familiar with Sean?
Not that
So
I'm aware of.
Sean is, I think he's a guy out of the UK. He's out in Europe somewhere, but
Okay.
he's not stateside. I think he completed 110 or 120 Ironman triathlons in consecutive days.
Wow.
But anyway, I'd seen this, like, oh, so now there's this whole world of, let's just make up a challenge, and it'll be super hard, it'll be super creative, and no one's ever done it before.
Yeah.
And so that's where my brain started to turn toward, is what were some self-created challenges that I could do. And that's when I had done Calendar Club for the first time, which is running the number of miles equal to the day of the month for the month of April. And that was one that was inspired off of Jesse Itzler and his crew, because they had just got done doing it. And during that time, this was fresh in COVID, but there was this feeling after I completed that challenge that month, where it was completely selfish, just like there was no team aspect to it. I was coming from a background of playing sports, And there was this team goal, this greater goal in mind, not just the physical and personal achievement of a challenge. And that's where another shift had kind of happened, where I went down this path of doing these charity runs.
I was just going to say, when did they come in? Because I feel like we haven't got there yet. And I know a lot
Yeah.
of the runs that you do have been very focused on raising money for charity. So, what was the first charity you decided to run for?
So a teammate of mine, he's one of my good friends. His name's Blake, and his mom back in 2020 had passed away from pancreatic cancer. And knowing that the family had wanted to start a nonprofit, I worked with them to put together a run from Duluth, Minnesota back to St. Paul, 160 miles, where we would basically kickstart the Love Like Glory Legacy 501c3 nonprofit. And so that later that year, so April did the calendar club, and then October is when we ran the first series of 3 parts of the Love Like Glory Legacy Foundation runs. And so that first year was 160 miles, raised $10,000.
Wow.
The next year, we made the distance longer and ran across the state of Minnesota, running 266 miles in 4.5 days, and we raised $22,000. And then the final part that in, I think it was 2023 or 2022, we ran from Springfield, Illinois, 500 miles back to St. Paul, Minnesota, and we raised $51,000 for our nonprofit.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Does that make the running easier, knowing that it's no longer for just kind of just for internal reasons that you're running? Don't get me wrong; those runs are still phenomenally powerful. But when you're running now, because you've got a real purpose and because you're raising money for a cause that's really close to your heart and close to friends, does that make the run a little bit easier, or does it actually add more pressure to you?
I think there's elements that add more pressure. I think I would be lying if I said that I didn't have personal, selfish reasons that drove me there to begin with. I think oftentimes running, and I'm guilty of this too. We can try and convince ourselves that I'm running for this purpose when I set this mission to go out, I was like, I'm running because I want to see if I can complete this challenge. And then using that as an opportunity to bring other people along and shed awareness on things that I care deeply about was like, that drove an entire portion of the ability to move forward through the pain. Blake, he is not a runner. Him and I were football players. I'm definitely more built like a runner. He is not built like a runner. And each year, the first year he did 80 miles. The second year he did 100 miles. The third year he did 250 miles. And so being able to share miles with people that I care deeply about for a purpose that was greater than all of us, like all of those elements came together. So easier. Tremendous. I don't know if it was easier, but more enjoyable in the pain, in the moments that were truly suffering.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tremendous. Absolutely phenomenal. So, you're setting these crazy challenges. You're raising thousands and thousands and thousands for charity. And you talk about those people who just do an ultra marathon or they do a marathon and that's they don't run. That never seems to. Are you motivated? Is it still very much that selfishness that drives you? And then, but also, you can use it as a platform to raise money for charities that are close to your heart, or do you just want to go out and do them sometimes and just again kind of off the grid? I know you vlog a lot of them as well, and you cook on. Is there any part of you that sometimes just goes, today I'm just going to go out and do the run for me, even though I know the runs are for you? But is there any part you just goes, I'm not going to record this one. It doesn't matter if anybody sees that.
Yeah, don't even bring the watch type of thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes. And those seem to be some of the most enjoyable runs, or pure, bring me back to the day I first ran and had that feeling, because I didn't have the watch, I didn't have the shoes, I just had stuff that I brought from my old football locker and was like, this is good enough. I'm going to go out the door and run. And that, it always connects me back to that. I think when I think about runs now, of putting them on the calendar, or, for this recent run of running the Beat My Beer Mile series that I did, to me, it does start from a place of like, will this challenge me? Will I have fun doing this? Is this going to be an adventure? And I think those are all three pretty selfish reasons. But I think when I am able to say that I feel really solid and pure in the enjoyment of those three elements, then that's going to translate to having a positive impact on other people, because it's just coming from a place where I'm having fun doing this. It's like listening to music, and when you listen to that artist or you hear them play live, they're all in on that experience. And that translates to the viewer, to the listener. And I think when I start from that place, it's like, okay, this is not just going to help me, but it's going to help other people as well.
And you talk about, I'm trying to think where I was going with that there, because I was too busy listening, which I'm meant to be doing, by the way. But I was trying to dissect something as we went into it, and it's going to have to come back to me. You're talking about it's totally gone. That's going to really annoy me, because I'm sure it was a good question as well.
It's going to come back. It's going to come back. And when it does, shout it out.
I will. I'm not even going to edit this part out. It's just natural. I just forgot about it. So you're doing these challenges, and the miles are getting bigger. That was it. How has life genuinely changed? Because you talked about there when you graduated, you started working for a startup called Coffee Brew Company.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably see your posts now on your social feeds and think that's his profession now, full-time runner. All he does is these challenges, and that might be the case, but more often than not, it's not the case. So how has life changed since you started doing these runs?
Yeah. So we'll start right there. By nature of what I do, running is my full-time job. By nature of how I make money, let's just say the money isn't lucrative, in terms of no one's paying me right now I just got monetized on my YouTube last week, and I made 30 cents last week. So I'm finding these odd jobs. I'm working with this sauna cold tub company, that one of my best friends, who's a guy that we do this stroller run every year. We go back and redo the first Love Like Glory run and do that route, and we just pull strollers. And so I help do a run club there. I help create content for him and just help clean on days. So I'm just doing odd jobs in order to support myself. But I did have to step away from the cold brew coffee company, because I was spending too much time investing in running, that I just couldn't give my full time, effort, and energy to the coffee business. But it's funny, someone asked on Sunday, I was with a friend, and he was looking for advice on how to go down your path, or how to take risks, or how do you think about risks. And I think about the run I just did, and this ties into how my life has changed, is the run I just did of running self-supported and doing these beer mile challenges. Beer mile wasn't a part of my life until I did Calendar Club. And Calendar Club, I would just do beer mile on the first day of the month, and it started to become a thing. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm going to keep going down this path. Yeah. Calendar Club wasn't a part of my life until I did the Calendar Club challenge the first time 4 or 5 years ago. And a part of this full year Calendar Club that I just did, there was a month in February where I doubled down and I did a full month of Calendar Club outside. and a full month of Calendar Club on a treadmill. And
Oh,
the
wow.
reason I did that was because I had made a joke online that people who run on treadmills are soft. And I got all of these treadmill runners telling me I could never last on a treadmill. And
Right.
so I was like, okay, I'm going to show you that I can. And the message here is that I had no plan of the exact way that it looks today was not
Yeah.
a part of the plan when I first set out. But what I've allowed myself to do is not hold too tightly to the things that I expect or anticipate are going to bring me the most happiness, are going to work out the way that the way that I think they're supposed to work out.
Yeah.
And allowing myself just to say, oh, this is happening right now, there's momentum behind this, or I'm having a ton of fun creating this or doing this challenge. And I'm just going to see where it takes me. And then for some reason down that line, it'll bring me somewhere else and it'll nudge me in a different direction. And so I'm in tune enough right now, and I'm hoping to get better with it, is just letting life take me where it wants and me just adding a little bit of my energy to it.
No, yeah. And I think that's a really important lesson for anyone who's listening, that you don't have to have everything planned. And, I'm sure some of your best plans have come from when you've been out on a run, when you
Yeah.
said you've just got the weight of the world's off your shoulders and you've got time to reflect and internalize and talk to yourself. And yeah, I'm pretty sure you come up with a new plan every run.
Yeah. That's the problem, Andy. That's the problem.
Yeah, you have to come back and write them on a board and
Yeah.
go, right, we can't do that one, we'll do this one. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's fantastic. Beer mile. I've seen like a lot of your posts at the minute. Obviously, you're in training and people are going through different techniques for you to drink the beer and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you can see times are varying.
Ah, dude, everyone's got an opinion.
It looks hard.
It is. It
It
is.
looks hard. I know Corey was saying that, you know, having 3 pounds of beer sat in your belly whilst you're trying to run is, you probably don't have time to think about it because you're running it so fast, but it's afterwards that makes
Yeah.
it a thing. But I suppose if it's something that's you're not doing constantly, then that first time must be a bit of a shock to the system when all of a sudden you're now trying to run after you've just drank a gassy beer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I watched an interview or a podcast with him, and the guy was sort of a goofy interview, but he was asking him if he ever practices or trains drinking. And Corey's like, no, I just,
Was that
I
me?
do I might have been, I don't know.
Sounds
But
like it might be.
he, he said that he doesn't practice chugging or practice like do beer mile. He does his normal track training and running, and he shows up
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm watching some of these clips and he's drinking the beer in 6 to 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm practicing every day. And this is like
Uh,
it takes time to you know add some of those other elements like chugging and then drinking and sprinting with all of that beverage in your stomach.
yeah.
It's
I genuinely think I'm going to try one. It'll be a very slow one, but I really want to try one just to see what it feels like.
well,
It's really in my head.
how far are you from Justin?
When he's home in England, probably about an hour's drive, not far at all. But
Okay.
Justin will outrun me backwards. I am the worst runner in the world.
That's okay. I know he is I don't know if you've seen him start doing beer miles, but he posted one the other day. So when he's back home, you guys should link up.
I'm
I'm
going to.
sure. Yeah.
He says he still wants to do one with you.
Does he?
Yeah, he's
Good.
actually messaged me, as I said just before the podcast, when he seen that I was going to be talking to you, and he says I want to do a beer mile against him if I get back out there. And I said we'll try and make that happen on the pod.
Bring it on, Justin. I'm waiting for you.
It's going straight out. That video clip's going straight out. That'd be amazing. I feel like this is probably a daft question because I don't even know if you'll know the answer at the moment, but because beer mile is very much your focus at the moment.
Yeah.
Are there any other plans moving forward for the future, or is it very much just a case you'll know when you know?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't really talked about this too publicly, but and so just to take us back for a second, starting on May 1st, 2023, I did a full year or set out on this journey to do a full year of the Calendar Club Challenge.
Wow.
And for those who aren't familiar, Calendar Club is when you run the number of miles equal to the day of the month. And I said that earlier, but I did it every month for one full year. So May 1st, 1 mile, 2 miles, all the way to the 31st, I did 31 miles. And then June 1st, I went back to 1 mile. And that's what prompted the beer miles, because it was a fun way to, start and end a month. And through that journey, I ran 6,400 miles for the full year. And I just kept noticing that when I would say, I'm doing Calendar Club, running the number of miles equal to the day of the month for a full year, I was getting these comments of people thinking, oh my gosh, I thought that he was going to say he was going to run 300 miles on the 300th day of the year, and then 301 miles on the 300. It's like, first of all, let's just, I mean, no shame to anybody, but like, let's think logically here. That's impossible.
That's a lot of miles to do. That is a lot of miles.
That's impossible. But it did get this idea cooking in my brain of like, okay, what would that number be? So if you started at 1, what would you get to before you had no more time in a single day? Or and I'm not sure if I'm saying the calendar right, but the Gregorian calendar.
Okay.
There's a Julian calendar. It's when the calendar was going from 1 to 365. So I have this idea of doing the Gregorian gauntlet when I just start on day 1 and see what day I can end, and whether that's day 90, whether that's day 100. And so I have that on my board to do next year. But right now, at the moment, I'm kind of all in on this experience of the beer mile. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ricky Gates, but he's an ultra runner that I had seen way back in the day, and he ran across America with $5,000 over the course of 5 months with nothing but a baby stroller.
Wow.
And that's what really prompted this, like, oh, I can just walk out my door and start running. I don't need a crew. I don't need a ton of sponsor money. So right now I'm literally living what I had imagined in terms of being able to just kind of live off the land and camp and do the things that I want to do in terms of the running space. So that is a goal I have for next year. But like I just mentioned, wherever life takes me over the next 6 months, we'll see what happens with that.
But I mean, and I'm sure you've done it with all the different run challenges you've done. What's a realistic mileage in a 24-hour period?
That's a good question. I mean, I've done 100 miles in 24 hours.
Amazing.
Going at a 4-mile-an-hour pace.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I just thought I would ask, just because in my head I'm just trying to work out how many days you'd get to before, obviously at the moment you're saying kind of day 100 is where you've been.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see. That's just why I was wondering what is a realistic 24-hour goal. So 100 miles still incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. What would be your one piece of advice to somebody? Like, it could be about running, it could be someone who wants to follow your journey. Just one piece of advice that you would tell anybody who asks for it.
Yeah. I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. And I think if people understood how not perfect you have to be in order to get better, then I think a lot more people would not quit. And I've worded that horribly, but
no, you haven't.
Essentially, like, I am not perfect every single day. I don't think I've had a perfect day ever in terms of running, in terms of my lifting, my weight training, in terms of not procrastinating or scrolling on social media. Like, I am so not perfect in everything that I do that it's sometimes scary. But what I don't do is I never quit. Like if I have a bad day, I know that okay, I had a 50% day at lifting this morning. Tomorrow I'm going to come back. Can I at least have a 51% day?
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't really even matter if I have a 30% day the next day. The fact that I had a day that wasn't a nothing day
Yeah, yeah, of course.
is like the most important thing.
No, it's absolutely fantastic advice. Mark, thank you so much for sharing the whole story with Hobby of a Lifestyle. It's been absolutely amazing to learn. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Been a pleasure.